After the sinking of the RMS Titanic in April 1912, the world entered a period of uncomfortable reflection. At first, newspapers focused on the scale of the tragedy. The loss of more than 1,500 lives shocked both sides of the Atlantic. Families waited for lists of survivors. Cities held memorials. Ships and harbors lowered their flags. But once the initial shock began to fade, a deeper question emerged. How could a ship described as the safest ever built disappear on its very first voyage? Public grief slowly turned into public scrutiny. Politicians demanded answers. Shipping companies faced criticism. Survivors told their stories, and those stories revealed confusion, miscommunication, and a lack of preparation. Investigations began almost immediately. In the United States, a Senate inquiry called witnesses to testify. Crew members, surviving passengers, and company officials were questioned in detail. In Britain, a separate inquiry examined similar evidence. Both investigations attempted to understand what had gone wrong. The findings pointed to several factors. The ship had been traveling at high speed, despite multiple ice warnings. Lifeboat capacity had been insufficient for the number of people on board. Emergency drills had not been conducted thoroughly. Communication between ships had not been consistent throughout the night. None of these facts alone caused a disaster, but together they formed a chain of vulnerability. One of the most important outcomes of these inquiries was the realization that maritime law had not kept pace with technological advancement. Regulations governing lifeboats were based on ship sizes from decades earlier. Wireless communication was still treated as a secondary service rather than a critical safety system. The tragedy forced change. In 1914, international representatives gathered to create what became known as the Safety of Life at Sea Convention. This agreement introduced new global standards for passenger ships. It required vessels to carry enough lifeboats for every person on board. It mandated continuous radio monitoring so that distress signals could be received at any hour. It established formal procedures for lifeboat drills and emergency readiness. Another significant reform was the creation of an international ice patrol. Ships would now monitor and report iceberg locations in the North Atlantic shipping lanes, and that information would be shared widely so captains could adjust routes and speed accordingly. These changes reshaped maritime safety around the world. Over time, ships became more structurally reinforced, bulkhead designs were reevaluated, steel quality standards improved, and training for crew members became more systematic. The shipping industry entered a new era of accountability. But the cost of those improvements could not be undone. For the families who lost loved ones, reform offered little comfort. For survivors who remembered the cold darkness of that night, regulation could not erase memory. As historians continue to examine the disaster, a broader lesson becomes clear. The sinking of the RMS Titanic was not the result of a single catastrophic error, and it was not simply the iceberg. Icebergs had existed in those waters for centuries, and ships had encountered them before. The deeper cause was a pattern of assumptions. There was confidence in engineering, confidence in reputation, and confidence in experience, and each layer of confidence reduced the perceived need for caution. When a ship is described as unsinkable, that word begins to shape behavior. Speed feels acceptable, risk feels manageable, and warnings feel less urgent. Human beings are influenced by belief, and belief can alter decision-making in subtle but powerful ways. On the night of April 14, 1912, multiple ice warnings were received, and each message contained valuable information. Yet the ship maintained near full speed. There was no immediate order to drastically reduce pace, and no widespread sense of imminent danger. The ocean appeared calm and the sky was clear, and there were no visible signs of threat until the iceberg appeared directly ahead. In hindsight, it is easy to identify the danger, but at the time, the atmosphere on board was one of normalcy. Passengers dined, read, and socialized. Music played in the lounges. Crew members followed routine tasks. Disaster rarely announces itself loudly in advance. It often arrives in the space between confidence and caution. When the iceberg struck, it did not tear a single dramatic hole in the hull. Instead, it created a series of openings across several compartments. The ship was designed to survive flooding in 4 compartments, but 6 were compromised. That narrow margin determined everything. Engineering decisions are often based on probability, and designers estimate the most likely scenarios while building within limits considered reasonable. But nature does not follow probability charts and does not respect expectations. The bulkheads within the RMS Titanic did not extend high enough to prevent water from spilling over once the bow dipped. And as the front of the ship lowered, gravity carried seawater from one compartment into the next. It was a gradual progression at first, and many passengers felt little movement. Some were reluctant to board lifeboats because they did not believe the ship was in serious danger. The scale and stability of the vessel created an illusion of safety. By the time the severity of the situation became undeniable, options were limited. Lifeboats were lowered into the freezing Atlantic, some departing partially filled, while communication became urgent but fragmented. Musicians continued to play as the angle of the deck increased, and at 2:20 in the morning, the ship broke apart and disappeared beneath the surface. In the years that followed, Titanic became more than a maritime disaster. It became a symbol of ambition, industrial power, and overconfidence. The early 20th century was an era of rapid progress, with skyscrapers rising higher each year, railways connecting continents, and new machines transforming daily life. Many believed humanity was entering an age where technology could solve nearly every challenge, and Titanic embodied that optimism. Its grand staircases, electric lighting, and wireless communication represented modern achievement, and its scale suggested dominance over distance and danger. But technology does not eliminate vulnerability. It changes the form of vulnerability. The reforms that followed the disaster demonstrate that progress often comes through painful correction, because laws were strengthened when tragedy revealed weaknesses, and safety measures were adopted when loss exposed oversight. More than a century later, ships crossing the North Atlantic are guided by satellite navigation, radar, and advanced forecasting systems. Crews conduct regular drills, lifeboats are sufficient for all passengers, and ice patrols operate continuously during peak seasons. These systems exist because of what happened in 1912. The wreck of the RMS Titanic was discovered in 1985 by oceanographer Robert Ballard, and resting nearly 12,500 feet below the surface, the remains are slowly deteriorating as iron-eating bacteria consume the metal and the structure weakens year by year. Time is reclaiming what pride celebrated. Yet even as the physical ship fades, the story endures because it speaks to something universal. Human beings build, innovate, and strive to surpass limitations, and these instincts drive progress, but they can also create blind spots. When confidence grows unchecked, caution can appear unnecessary, and when success accumulates, warning signs may seem exaggerated. The lesson of Titanic is not that ambition is wrong, it is that humility must accompany ambition. The ocean does not adjust itself to human schedules. Ice does not melt because a ship is impressive, and nature remains indifferent to reputation. The tragedy reminds us that systems must be questioned even when they appear flawless. Regulations must evolve alongside innovation, and leadership requires the willingness to act conservatively when risk is uncertain. History does not remember Titanic only for its luxury or size. It remembers the night when confidence met reality. The greatest mistake was not simply striking an iceberg, it was believing striking one was nearly impossible. And that belief shaped decisions long before the ship left port. The Atlantic Ocean closed over the wreck, but it did not erase the lesson. Progress without preparation carries danger. Prestige without precaution invites vulnerability, and nature remains patient. Long after headlines fade, long after steel corrodes, the story continues to echo across generations, as a reminder that no creation is beyond limitation, no design is beyond improvement, and no era is beyond error. The ocean is vast, human achievement is remarkable, humility remains essential, and history remembers.